September 18, 1944, 6:42 a.m., Peleliu Island. The sun isn't up yet, but the heat is already gathering thick, wet, and suffocating. The kind of heat that sticks to the back of your neck like a hand that refuses to let go. Marine Radio Man Corporal James Harlan is lying face down in coral dust, the taste of iron and smoke clinging to his tongue. Behind him, you can hear the shriek, those Japanese Type 96 artillery rounds cutting through the air like razors. They slam into the ridge behind the Marines, exploding in bursts of orange and black that roll across the battlefield like angry waves. Another blast hits close, too close. Fragments whistle past his helmet. One of them punches into the sand right by his cheek, still steaming. Harlan doesn't flinch. His fingers are already moving over the radio set, sweat dripping off his knuckles. The leather strap digs into his shoulder. His breath is shallow. Somewhere to his left, a corpsman is dragging a wounded man backward by the webbing, boots carving lines into the coral. All around, Marines are pinned. Above them, impossibly high on that jagged knife of rock called Murbergol, mountain Japanese observers are relaying every movement with ruthless precision. The ridge is alive with eyes, and those eyes are killing men. Harlan hears his handset crackle, a low, calm voice. Signal Team 1. Execute pattern echo. That's the moment. The moment no one else on the battlefield even sees. He reaches for a small laminated card strapped to his wrist, 6 hand-drawn frequency shifts, scribbled arrows, and one bold word, deception. His thumb flicks the dial. Once, twice, 3 times. A heartbeat later, the other Marine radio operators scattered across Peleliu do the same perfect timing.
Else.
Like the quiet turning of gears inside a machine no one knows exists. Nothing seems different. Then, something changes in the distance. The Japanese guns that were raining death across the beachhead suddenly fall silent. No ranging shots, no bracketing bursts. Just nothing. As if a hand reached across the ridge and snuffed them out. You can almost feel the Marines lifting their heads, confused. Did the Japanese run out of shells? Did their spotters retreat? No, something far stranger is happening, because on the opposite side of the ridge, inside a dark limestone cave that smells of oil, sweat, and cordite, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, the mastermind behind Peleliu's defenses lines, over his own radio operator, scowling. Why have the coordinates stopped? His voice is sharp, unforgiving. The operator adjusts his headset, tapping the side of the receiver. Static, only static. Nakagawa's eyebrows tighten. Those spotters on the ridge were his best, his most disciplined. They never fell out of contact. Yet suddenly every artillery request they send back is wrong. Off-target, nonsensical, like someone scrambled their words mid-flight. Outside, his artillery commanders begin to panic. The Americans are advancing again, and the guns can't see them. Nakagawa doesn't know it yet, but his men aren't failing. They're being blinded, not by smoke, not by weather, but by a Marine radio man, lying in coral dust with a tiny card strapped to his wrist. A trick so simple, so crude, it shouldn't have worked. And yet it's about to shift the entire battle, because somewhere in the haze, Harlan hears the voice again. Pattern echo confirmed. Begin drift pool, and when he turns the dial one more time, everything on Peleliu changes. But how could a handful of frequency hops cripple the strongest Japanese artillery network in the Pacific? The ridge is quiet. Too quiet. Corporal Harlan feels the silence before he understands it. The ground is no longer trembling under coordinated barrages. No more scream of inbound shells carving the air like giant spinning knives. Only the shallow thump of distant machine gun fire and the soft hiss of wind moving across scorched coral. To a Marine on Peleliu, silence isn't peace. It's a question. Harlan keeps his head down, ear pressed to the radio handset as he scans through the rotating frequencies, shifting in a pattern only a dozen men on the island know. His voice is steady as he calls out. Signal drift engaged. Phase 2 in 30 seconds. Behind him, a sergeant crawls up through the dust, eyes wide. Artillery's gone quiet, he whispers. What the hell did you do, Harlan? Harlan doesn't answer, mostly because he's not sure how to explain it. This wasn't his idea. It wasn't even supposed to work this fast. The credit belonged to the man a mile behind him, sitting cross-legged behind a makeshift command table under a camo net flecked with leaves. Lieutenant Charles Donovan Awiri, thoughtful signal officer with round spectacles and the calm voice of a man who sees the battlefield differently than everyone else. You wouldn't notice him in a crowd, but he's about to become the reason thousands of Marines live through the day. Back at Donovan's mobile command post, the tent shivers with each distant explosion, dust drifting from the canvas ceiling like powdered bone. Donovan's pencil dances across a greaseboard, drawing loops and arrows, mapping the pattern as it unfolds. Frequency hopping, low-tech, manual, primitive, and utterly invisible to the Japanese. He de-learned the idea from an old pre-war naval paper experimental thought exercise about shifting wireless traffic to confuse enemy eavesdroppers. But this wasn't theory. This was Peleliu, where the coral-shredded boots and bullets crawled out of the shadows. And the Japanese were masters of wired-blind artillery. They didn't need to see the battlefield, their spotters did. High on the ridges, hidden in caves. Watching every movement through slit windows carved into the limestone, spotter calls went out. Fire missions came back and Marines died. Donovan knew the Japanese operated on predictable radio channels, tight, narrow, disciplined. But he also knew something else. If you couldn't jam an enemy, confuse him. Confuse him so thoroughly he doubts his own eyes. He taps the board again, muttering under his breath. Shift, drift, mimic, distort. Each Marine radio man on Peleliu isn't jamming Japanese frequencies, they're dancing around them. It's creating ghost signals, faint echoes, and misleading snippets that make Japanese spotter transmissions appear incomplete or corrupted. It's not electronic warfare, it's sleight of hand. Magic performed with metal knobs and sweaty fingers. Inside the Japanese command cave, Colonel Nakagawa stands over his intelligence officer, hands clasped behind his back. His jaw is rigid. The cave smells of oil lamps and hot stone. Maps are pinned against the walls with bayonets. Kettle whistles faintly in the background. A report arrives breathless, rushed. Colonel. All 3 forward artillery teams report interference. They believe the enemy is jamming. Nakagawa's eyes narrow. Impossible. Americans do not jam our channels. They have no such capability. Another officer adds, It may be their aircraft, sir. Perhaps a new device. But Nakagawa shakes his head. No. If the Americans had such technology, they would use it in every battle. They would broadcast loudly, brazenly. This is different. He takes the receiver himself, listening to the jagged static. Beneath the noise, he hears what sounds like fragmented syllables, almost like Japanese, but chopped, misaligned, distorted. Not enemies whispering, not jamming. It's something far stranger. He realizes with a sinking chill that the Americans aren't simply blocking their transmissions. They're stealing them, borrowing the timing, mimicking the cadence, creating shadows of words, ghosts in the frequencies. Best spotters men who have never once misread a coordinator, suddenly firing artillery based on corrupted instructions. Wrong ranges, wrong azimuths, round after round, falling into empty jungle. Nakagawa's artillery has gone blind, and the Americans are still coming. Back on the battlefield, the Marines begin moving again, not fast, not confidently, but with that cautious, desperate forward crawl that defines Peleliu. Men drag themselves over broken coral, rifles tucked against their chests, sweat pouring down their backs. Every Marine on that beach knows the truth. When the Japanese artillery is silent, you move. Harlan keeps shifting frequencies, feeding the deception pattern through the radio net. Pattern echoes stable, he mutters. Signal ghost active. A shell detonates far behind them, hundreds of yards off target. The sergeant beside him grins grimly. They're firing blind. But Donovan's voice comes through the radio before the relief can settle in. All units prepare for counter-intercept. They'll try to adapt. Because they will. Nakagawa is too smart. His officers too disciplined. The real question is simple. How long before the Japanese figure out what's happening? How long before they re-establish their deadly accuracy? How long before the ridgeline wakes up again? The answer is coming. And when it does, it won't be subtle. Because inside the Japanese command cave, Nakagawa steps back from the radio and makes a cold decision. If our spotters cannot see them, we will light the battlefield until they can. A new threat is forming, something far more dangerous than artillery. And the Marines don't know it's coming.